She was dying in a cold, forgotten castle. She begged to see her daughter. She hoped her husband would come. No one did. Too weak to write, Catherine of Aragon spoke her final message to the man who once loved her, then threw her aside, and who wanted her dead. Hours later, she was gone. When they opened her body, they froze. Her heart was black, completely black, like someone killed by poison. Here's the part that chills the soul. Catherine had suffered all the humiliations because she couldn't give Henry a surviving son. But what if she had? Henry VIII might never have divorced her. England might never have broken from the Catholic Church. No Bloody Mary reign people had feared. One child's survival could have changed history, but he died, and Catherine paid the price. So, did Henry VIII murder his first wife? And what would the world look like if he never had a reason to? The answer hides in what they found inside her body. If you love hearing untold history stories like this, please give the video a like. It really helps the channel, and share it with other history lovers like you.
January 7th, 1536, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Catherine of Aragon lay dying at Kimbolton Castle in Huntingdonshire. The room was cold. The castle was old and damp. She had lived there since May 1534, exiled by the husband who once called her his true love. She had been awake since just after midnight. She kept asking her servants what time it was, again and again. She wanted to hear Mass. She wanted to receive communion one last time. Her confessor was a man named George de Athqua, Bishop of Llandaff. He offered to say Mass early, before in the morning. Catherine refused. She quoted Latin scripture to him. The Mass must be said at the proper time. Even at death's door, Catherine followed the rules. When dawn broke, she heard Mass with deep devotion. She received extreme unction, the last rites of the Catholic Church. Then she dictated her will. She signed it herself with a shaking hand. She asked that it be sent to Eustace Chapius, the imperial ambassador. He was one of her few remaining friends at the English court. She prayed for her daughter Mary. She forgave Henry for everything he had done to her. Hours later, she was dead. But Catherine's death was only the beginning of the mystery. What happened 8 hours later would shock everyone who witnessed it and point to something far more sinister than a natural death. The news reached London 2 days later. Henry VIII was at Greenwich Palace. When he heard, he dressed himself entirely in yellow. So did Anne Boleyn, the woman who had replaced Catherine. They threw a celebration. Eustace Chapius, Catherine's loyal defender, was heartbroken. He wrote to Emperor Charles V, Catherine's nephew, "Nobody doubts here that some treacherous act has befallen the Queen." But what treacherous act? What really killed Catherine of Aragon? 8 hours after her death, we would get our first clue, and it would terrify everyone who heard about it. In Tudor times, it was common for royal bodies to be opened before burial at their place of death. It is a part of the careful preparation for the journey to their final resting place. Certain organs, most often the heart, lungs, and intestines, were removed. This helped preserve the body, slowing decay, and making it possible to transport the queen or king over long distances. The man who embalmed Catherine's body was sent by King Henry VIII. His name has been lost to history, but we know his profession. He was a chandler, a candlemaker, because doctors weren't always involved in royal embalming. But the strange thing is, During embalming, no one was allowed in the room. No priests, no witnesses from Catherine's household, just the chandler and his assistant. They worked by candlelight in the middle of the night. The chandler had done this kind of work before. In the 16th century, embalmers and chandlers often prepared bodies for burial. He knew what a normal body looked like inside. Catherine's body was not normal. He opened her chest. Her lungs looked healthy. Her stomach looked healthy. All her organs appeared sound for a woman of 50, except her heart. The heart was completely black, not dark red, not purple, black as coal. The chandler lifted it out and carried it to a basin of water. He washed it carefully. The black did not come off. He cut the heart open down the middle. The inside was black too. Then he noticed something else. A black mass clung to the outside of the heart, a growth of some kind. He had never seen anything like it. The chandler was frightened. He knew this discovery could cost him his life, but he could not keep silent. He found Bishop Diathque, Catherine's confessor. He pulled him aside. He whispered what he had found. The bishop asked the obvious question: was she poisoned? The chandler's response has come down to us through the report of Eustace Chapuis. The thing was too evident, he said. Too evident. In other words, yes. But if Catherine was murdered, who wanted her dead? In a few minutes, we'll examine 4 suspects, each with motive, means, and opportunity. One of them may have gotten away with the perfect crime.
Let's start with the man who had the most to gain from Catherine's death, her husband. King Henry VIII was 41 years old in 1533. He had been married to Catherine for nearly 24 years. Now, Henry wanted to divorce her. The reason? She was unable to give him a surviving son. The Catholic Church did not allow divorce. Henry needed the Pope to annul his marriage, to declare it had never been valid. His excuse was that Catherine had previously been married to his brother Arthur, who died in 1502. The Bible said a man should not marry his brother's widow. Henry claimed this made his marriage to Catherine sinful. Never mind that the Pope had given special permission for the marriage in the first place. Catherine insisted she had never consummated her marriage to Arthur. She was Henry's true wife and England's true queen. She would not step aside. In 1533, Henry did something unprecedented. He broke away from the Catholic Church in Rome and declared himself the head of the Church in England. He annulled his own marriage and married Anne Boleyn in secret. When Catherine refused to accept this, he banished her from court and took away her title. She was no longer Queen Catherine. She was the Dowager Princess of Wales, a title that referred to her brief marriage to Arthur decades earlier. He forbade her from seeing their daughter Mary. Both Catherine and Mary refused to acknowledge Anne Boleyn as queen, and this infuriated Henry. This situation also created serious political problems for him. The Pope was furious. So was Emperor Charles V of Spain, Catherine's nephew. Charles was one of the most powerful men in Europe, and he could have invaded England to defend his aunt's honor. The only thing stopping him was Catherine herself. She repeatedly begged Charles not to go to war on her behalf. She did not want English blood spilled because of her. But her very existence remained a problem for Henry. As long as Catherine lived, she was a rallying point for his enemies. Foreign powers could use her as an excuse to attack England. Catholics at home could claim Anne Boleyn was not the real queen. Henry's solution was simple. Catherine needed to die. Did he actively plan to kill her? The evidence suggests he at least wished for it.
On January 3, 1534, 2 years before Catherine's death, Ambassador Chapuis wrote to Emperor Charles, warning him that Catherine and Mary might be assassinated. 2 weeks later, Chapuis reported something even more disturbing. Henry was spreading false rumors that Catherine had dropsy, a disease that caused swelling. Chapuis believed Henry was doing this for the purpose of producing in her one of these days some artificial dropsy, of which she may die. Artificial dropsy. In other words, poison that would look like a natural disease. Other people shared these fears. In February 1534, a Spanish diplomat named Count Cifuentes wrote that if the Pope delayed his decision on the annulment much longer, it will give occasion for the Queen to lose her life. In 1534, members of Henry's government visited Catherine at Buckingham Palace. They threatened her with execution if she did not swear an oath recognizing Henry as head of the church and Anne as the true queen. Catherine told them she was ready to die. But she asked for one thing, that she should not be put to death in her own room or in any secret place, but publicly and before the people. She knew Henry might kill her. She wanted witnesses. The threats continued. In early 1535, Thomas Cromwell, Henry's chief minister, made ominous comments to Chapuis. He suggested Catherine would not live long. He said her health was failing. Chapuis heard rumors from court that Anne Boleyn was encouraging Henry to kill both Catherine and Mary. In November 1535, an unnamed source told Chapuis that the king had decided to rid himself of the queen and princess at this next session of Parliament. Chapuis wrote to Charles V, "The danger is imminent." By the end of December, Charles was so concerned that he told Chapuis, if Catherine and Mary were truly in danger of execution, they should take the oath. Their safety matters more than their refusal to accept Anne Boleyn. So Henry had a motive. He had made threats. He had wished aloud for Catherine's death. But did he actually do it? History shows he was absolutely capable. He later sent 2 of his wives, Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, to the scaffold. But those women were English-born subjects, not foreign princesses. Catherine of Aragon was different. She was royal. She had an emperor for a nephew, and the Pope on her side. Henry couldn't openly execute her. But a quiet death? One that looked natural? For a man like Henry, that was entirely possible.
But history accuses another suspect, Anne Boleyn. Anne had become Queen of England in 1533, but her position was precarious. She had given birth to a daughter, Elizabeth, in September 1533. Henry was disappointed. He wanted a son. Anne had suffered at least 2 miscarriages or stillbirths since then. She was pregnant again in January 1536. The legitimacy of this child mattered desperately. As long as Catherine lived, many people, both in England and across Europe, did not recognize Anne as the true queen. They saw her as the king's mistress, and they viewed any children she bore as illegitimate. Anne believed Catherine's existence threatened her title as queen, and she had good reason to think so. The truth is, Catherine's life actually protected Anne, though Anne may not have realized it. If Henry grew tired of Anne, he couldn't easily cast her aside while Catherine still lived. He would have been forced to take Catherine back, which would humiliate him. But if Catherine died, Henry could claim Anne had never been his real wife either, and marry again. Still, Anne reportedly wanted Catherine dead. Chapuis reported repeatedly that Anne demanded Catherine's execution. When Catherine died, Anne gave a handsome present to the messenger who brought the news.
But here's something strange. A few days after Catherine's death, Chaput heard from multiple sources that Anne had been crying. She told her ladies she feared they might do with her as they did with the good queen. Was this guilt or just fear? Anne Boleyn would die 4 months later, executed on false charges of adultery and treason. Perhaps she sensed what was coming. It's worth mentioning that these claims come from Chaput's own reports. They're not solid historical proof, and since Chaput supported Catherine and Mary, there's always a chance he twisted the story in their favor. But while everyone's attention was on Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, many historians point to a third player in this deadly drama: Thomas Cromwell. Cromwell was Henry's chief minister. He was smart, ambitious, and dangerous. He was also utterly devoted to the king. If Henry wanted something done, Cromwell made it happen. Cromwell had orchestrated the break with Rome. He had supervised the annulment of Henry's marriage to Catherine. He had helped elevate Anne Boleyn to queen. And he is the one who orchestrated the death of Anne Boleyn. He fabricated charges of adultery with 5 men, accusations so absurd they were practically impossible for a watched queen. But Cromwell made them stick. He was also the one who kept making casual comments about Catherine not living much longer. He told Chaput this repeatedly throughout 1535, even when Catherine was not that much ill. Why would he say such things unless he knew something? Cromwell was a practical man. He saw Catherine as a problem that needed solving. He did not appear to have any moral qualms about how that problem was solved. But Cromwell was careful. He would not have acted without Henry's explicit permission. If Catherine was murdered, Cromwell might have arranged it, but Henry would have ordered it. There's one more suspect worth mentioning: the Italians. In January 1536, Chaput heard a strange rumor. An Italian man named Gueron had recently arrived in England. He came in great haste. He claimed to be seeking letters on behalf of someone called Protonotary Casale. But some people suspected Gueron had come for a different reason: to deliver poison from Italy. Italy was famous for poisons. The Borgia family had turned poisoning into an art form. Italian poison makers could create substances that killed slowly, leaving few traces. Chaput wrote that some suspected Gueron of sending the poison through Casale. Casale was being paid by Henry, 8 ducats a day. Perhaps he was earning that money by procuring poison. Chaput himself doubted this theory. He thought it was too risky. Too many people would need to be involved. Too many chances for the plot to be discovered. But the rumor persisted. So we have 4 potential suspects: Henry, Anne, Cromwell, and an Italian poisoner. Any of them could have wanted Catherine dead. Any of them might have had the means to kill her. But did any of them actually do it? To answer that, we need to look at Catherine's final weeks. What happened in those final weeks will reveal clues that investigators missed for centuries. The timeline of her illness holds secrets. Secrets that point to a specific moment when everything went wrong.
In mid-June 1535, Catherine's health was reportedly improving. Chaput received word that she was feeling better. Then, at the start of December, everything changed. Thomas Cromwell suddenly told Chaput that Catherine was very ill. The ambassador was alarmed. He feared the worst. But by December 13th, Catherine had recovered. Chaput wrote, "The Queen has recovered and is now well." On that same day, Catherine wrote a letter to her representative in Rome, Dr. Pedro Ortiz.
She made no mention of poor health. 2 weeks later, the situation turned dire. On December 29th, Chapuis received an urgent message from Catherine's doctor. She had suffered a relapse. She was much worse than a month ago. Chapuis immediately requested permission to visit her. Henry agreed. The two men met on December 30th. Henry told Chapuis he did not believe Catherine would live long. Once dead, Henry said, Charles will no longer have a pretense for mixing himself up with the affairs of England. Henry seemed almost eager for Catherine to die. He saw her death as the solution to his problems with Spain. As Chapuis was leaving the palace, the Duke of Suffolk, Henry's brother-in-law, stopped him. He had one more message from the king. News had just arrived that Catherine was in extremis. If Chapuis went to Kimbleton, he might not find her alive. Chapuis did not believe it was that urgent. He thought Henry was exaggerating. He mounted his horse immediately and set off for Kimbleton Castle. He arrived on January 2nd. What he found shocked him. Catherine had barely slept for 6 days. She was suffering from violent stomach pains that made her vomit constantly. She could not keep food down. She was so weak she could not stand. She could not even sit up in bed without help. Chapuis pulled her doctor aside. He asked the question directly, "Do you think the queen has been poisoned?" The doctor was afraid to answer clearly, but he said something telling. Catherine had gotten much worse after drinking some Welsh beer. The beer had been sent as a gift. Catherine's loyal servants had warned her not to drink it. They feared poison. But Catherine was thirsty. She drank it anyway. Within hours, her condition worsened dramatically. The timing seemed too convenient to be a coincidence. He asked her attendants and doctors if there was any chance she had been poisoned. They answered cautiously, speaking only of her worsening condition, but doubts about the beer lingered. Chapuis stayed at Kimbleton for several days. He sat with Catherine. He talked with her. He tried to lift her spirits. Slowly, she began to improve. She slept a little. She kept down some food. Her doctor thought she was out of danger. On the morning of January 5th, Chapuis left. He rode back to London, believing Catherine would recover. He was wrong. On the evening of January 6th, the Feast of Epiphany, Catherine felt strong enough to comb and tie her own hair. She dressed her head without help. It was the first time in days she had been able to do this. But after midnight, something changed. Catherine began asking repeatedly what time it was. She wanted to hear Mass at dawn. She wanted to receive communion. Her confessor offered to say Mass early. Catherine refused. The rules of the church said Mass must be at the proper time.
When dawn came, she heard Mass with great devotion. Then she dictated her will. She signed it. She asked that it be sent to Chapuis. She prayed for Mary. She forgave Henry. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon of January 7th, 1536, Catherine of Aragon died. She was 50 years old. Now comes the crucial question. Can we prove what killed her? The evidence from that night, what the chandler saw, what the doctor suspected, what modern science reveals, will finally give us answers. When Chapuis heard the news in London, he immediately sent one of his own servants to Kimbleton. He wanted to know exactly what had happened after he left. The servant reported back with the details of Catherine's final hours, but there was something else troubling in his report. The autopsy had been conducted in secret. The chandler who opened Catherine's body had been forbidden to speak about what he found. But he had spoken anyway. He told Bishop Diathaqua about the Black Heart. The bishop told others. Word spread. Within days, people across England were whispering, "Poison." Why? In Tudor times, a blackened heart was often seen as a sign of foul play. People believed that certain poisons could slowly destroy the body, leaving the heart dark and decayed while other organs seemed normal. The unusual color, combined with Catherine's sudden decline, fit the symptoms of what they feared was a slow poison, subtle, invisible, and deadly. Chapuis believed it. He wrote to Charles V describing the autopsy findings. He noted that Catherine's doctor thought the evidence was too evident to deny. But believing something and proving it are different things. If Catherine was poisoned, we need to answer several questions. What poison was used? How was it administered? Why did no one else get sick? Let's start with the poison itself. Catherine's symptoms were severe stomach pain, vomiting, weakness, and inability to sleep. These symptoms lasted about 5 weeks, from early December until her death. Then there was the Black Heart, the black mass attached to it, the darkness that would not wash away. No one in 1536 could identify a poison that would cause these exact effects. No one has done so since. Arsenic causes stomach pain and vomiting, but it does not turn the heart black. Cyanide kills quickly, not over 5 weeks. Mercury causes tremors and confusion, not the symptoms Catherine showed. The slow and subtle Italian poisons the ambassador mentioned were real. The Borgias used cantarella, a poison made from arsenic, but even cantarella does not turn the heart black. So either the poison theory is wrong, or there was a poison used that we cannot identify even today. Then there's the question of how it was administered. Catherine's servants were fiercely loyal. They prepared all her food themselves. They did this specifically because they feared she would be poisoned. Yet only Catherine became ill. No one else in her household showed any symptoms. How could someone poison only Catherine and no one else? The Welsh beer incident is suspicious. Catherine got worse after drinking it, but she had been sick before that, and she drank it only once. If the beer was poisoned, it could have only been 1 dose among many. How did the poisoner give her the other doses? And why would Henry allow an autopsy if he had ordered Catherine poisoned? Surely he would want the body buried quickly before anyone could examine it. The fact that he permitted the autopsy suggests he was not afraid of what would be found. Or perhaps he genuinely did not know what had killed her. These questions haunted historians for 350 years. Then, in 1885, a Victorian doctor made a discovery that changed everything. What he found in medical records would either prove the poison theory or destroy it completely. But he offered another explanation, one that makes more medical sense.
In 1885, a Victorian doctor named Sir Norman Moore published a short article about Catherine's death. Moore was a respected physician. He had conducted over 1,000 post-mortem examinations in his career. He had seen hearts like Catherine's before. Moore concluded that Catherine died of secondary melanotic sarcoma. This is a rare and aggressive form of cancer. It starts somewhere else in the body, often in the skin or internal organs. Then it spreads to other organs, including the heart. Melanotic sarcoma contains melanin, the same substance that gives color to skin and hair. When melanin concentrates in a tumor, it can turn black. Moore had seen this in other autopsy cases. He said no other disease of the heart in the least resembles the description given of Catherine's heart. Could poison cause a black heart? Moore said no, not any poison he knew of. He also noted that Catherine's symptoms matched melanotic sarcoma. The disease would have started with a small tumor somewhere in her body, too small to notice. Over time, the cancer spread. It reached her stomach, causing severe pain and vomiting. It reached her heart, forming the black mass the Chandler saw. By the time she died, the cancer had ravaged her internal organs. But it had started small. So small that the Chandler, working by candlelight, not a trained doctor, might have missed the original tumor. This explanation makes sense. It accounts for the black heart, the symptoms, the 5-week decline. It also explains why no one else got sick. You cannot catch cancer from someone else. You cannot poison someone with it. But there's a problem with relying on More's diagnosis. He was working from a 350-year-old description written by a non-medical professional. He never saw Catherine's body himself. Modern cancer specialists might have a different opinion. Or they might agree with More. We simply don't know. What we do know is this: there is no solid evidence that Catherine was poisoned. There are suspicions, rumors, and fears, but no proof. The medical evidence points to cancer. The autopsy findings match melanotic sarcoma better than any poison. So if Catherine probably died of natural causes, why did so many people believe she was murdered? Because it fit the story people wanted to believe.
Catherine was beloved. She had been treated cruelly by Henry for years. People wanted to believe she was a martyr, killed by a wicked king and his scheming mistress. And Boleyn was already hated by many English people. Blaming her for Catherine's death fit the narrative. It made Anne a villain. Henry's reaction to Catherine's death did not help his case. He dressed in yellow and celebrated. This looked like guilt, or at least callousness. But perhaps there's another way to think about Catherine's death. Perhaps Henry did not need to poison her. He had already destroyed her life. He had taken away her title, her home, her daughter. He had isolated her in cold, damp castles for 3 years. Stress can kill. Heartbreak can kill. The constant fear of poison, of execution, of never seeing Mary again, these things take a toll on the body. Catherine died of a black heart. Perhaps Henry blackened it not with poison, but with cruelty. The cancer may have killed her, but the life she was forced to live might have made her body vulnerable to disease. In that sense, Henry is guilty. Not murder by poison, but of something darker. A slow execution by neglect and emotional torture. But here's the question that historians have been obsessing over for 500 years. What if none of this had to happen? What if one child, just one, had survived? In the next few minutes, I'll show you a world where Catherine never died alone, Anne never lost her head, and England itself became unrecognizable. The world we know hung on 52 days of a baby's life.
But let's pause. Let's step away from the way Catherine died. Let's imagine a different path. What if she had never needed to die so tragically? What if Catherine and Henry's son, their firstborn, Prince Henry, born in January 1511, had survived? This was not their only child. Catherine had multiple pregnancies. Most ended in miscarriage or stillbirth. One daughter, Mary, survived. But Henry needed a son. He needed a male heir to secure the Tudor dynasty. If Prince Henry, Duke of Cornwall, had lived, everything would have changed. Let's imagine that alternate history. If that child had lived, Catherine would never have been cast aside. Henry VIII would have had his heir. No desperate search for a new wife, no Anne Boleyn catching his eye, or if she did, it wouldn't matter. Anne marries Henry Percy, the man she loved. She lives quietly, grows old, has children. She never becomes queen, never kneels at a scaffold, never loses her head. Catherine remains Queen of England until she dies naturally. She dies honored, mourned, at peace.
not alone in a cold castle, stripped of everything she held dear. Anne Boleyn's daughter, Elizabeth, was never born. No Elizabeth I, no Virgin Queen, no Spanish Armada, no Elizabethan Golden Age. Shakespeare still writes, but for a different England. The language itself evolves differently. Mary Tudor, Catherine's daughter, grows up loved. She's never declared a bastard, never separated from her mother, never traumatized. She marries a foreign prince, lives abroad, has children. She never becomes Bloody Mary. The fires never burn. Hundreds of Protestants live. Henry VIII broke with Rome in 1533 for one reason: to marry Anne Boleyn. No Anne, no break. England stays Catholic. The monasteries stand. Religious art survives. Thomas More lived to old age. Thomas Cromwell manages a stable kingdom instead of orchestrating revolution. Would Protestantism still come? Probably, but slowly, peacefully, over generations. Or maybe England stays Catholic forever, like Spain. Prince Henry becomes King Henry IX in 1547. Raised by Catherine with strong Catholic values, he must navigate a changing world. Does he suppress Protestant ideas with force, or reform from within, creating a middle path decades before Elizabeth tried it? Who knows? Either way, England looks completely different. With a secure succession, there are no crises, no civil wars. England and Spain become powerful allies. The British Empire forms differently, or not at all. The Puritans never fled to America. The United States might never exist. Every person you know from English history after 1536 either doesn't exist or lives a completely different life. All because of one child, one breath, one heartbeat that stopped in February 1511. Catherine probably died of cancer, not poison. In the end, whether by disease or despair, Catherine of Aragon died because a baby boy couldn't survive 52 days. And the world turned on that hinge. One child, everything. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this ride through history, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Next time, we will look at another mystery from the Tudor court. Until then, keep questioning, keep learning. And remember, history is never as simple as it seems.